How's it going, aliens? My name's iALiEN. Today I'm back on another Identity 5 video, and today's video is the one that I've been getting hundreds of comments about over the past month. Finally, the Survivor tier list for Season 10 is out, so let's get right into the video. Okay, before I get into the tier list, I do want to plug my Discord server. The link will be in the pinned comment below as well as in the description below, so go click the link and join the server today. Also, if you aren't subscribed to the channel or if you're just new to the channel, please subscribe. I'm really pushing for 20,000 subscribers for the summertime, and 75% of people watching this video is not subscribed, so please go click the subscribe button. I appreciate it a lot. Let's get right into the tier list. So this tier list has 5 tiers: S tier, A plus tier, A minus tier, B tier, C tier. The same thing like in season 9. C tier is the worst tier, S tier is the best tier. C tier survivors are not really used much in rank, definitely not in high tier rank. And they aren't too viable in high tier rank. Of course, you can use any character in this game and win with them, especially in Survivor, because your job may just to be only to decode that game. So, of course, you didn't hurt your team by playing someone because all you did was decode. But overall, these survivors don't provide much value to their team, so they are in C tier. B tier survivors are usually niche survivors. All of these survivors are actually good at what they do. It's just their playstyle is niche to this game. A lot of hunters may counter it, or they're only good in certain maps against certain hunters, things like that. A minus tier survivors are all very viable survivors. They have a place on high tier team comps, both in rank and tournament. They're good survivors, it's just they get outclassed by A plus and S tier. A plus tier survivors are very, very good survivors. They're all really good at what they do. They're basically just a step up from A minus tier. You see them a lot in tournament, a lot in rank. They are great picks to use. And S tier survivors are those game changing type of survivors who will be used the absolute most in legendary and in tournament and banned the most. Let's get right into C tier. So for the first time in I don't know how long, maybe since like season 1 or something, the worst survivor in the game is not Lawyer. The worst survivor in the game is Lucky Guy. Lucky Guy is a jack of all trades. I won't spend too much time on Lucky Guy. The biggest thing is this game is role based. If you need a rescuer, you use a rescuer. If you need a decoder, you use that. Same goes for support and kiter. You do not need a character that can do all of them because it's luck anyway. The items are less. If you want to be a rescuer, so you get a flare gun, first you have to get lucky enough to get the flare gun from the chest, wasting time from decoding, and then even if you get the flare gun, once you use it, it lasts shorter time than if you just use coordinator. Plus, you won't have the benefits of using coordinator, like chair persistence or the vaulting speed. So overall, that just goes for any item he gets. That's why Lucky Guy is not really too good. No reason to really use him. Might as well just use the survivor that has the item you want. Next, in C tier, a lot of people will be disappointed by this, and it is the Mind's Eye. The Mind's Eye is in C tier. With the new changes to the tier list, I was just forced to put her here. Her playstyle just isn't good in this meta. It's not really this meta does not prioritize decoding speed. When you look at the best characters, most of them don't have decoding buffs. Like, this meta just doesn't prioritize that, so her decoding buff isn't that useful. You can cipher rush without a Mind's Eye pretty easily. You do not need the coding buffs to do that, and her kiting makes her a liability on any team. If she goes down early, unlike someone like Mechanic, she can't help your team. If Mechanic goes down early, she can steal the code on chair. It's perfectly fine. Mind's Eye, she's useless when she goes down, and she's very easy to kill as a hunter because of how slow she vaults pallets, how slow she places pallets. Being able to see through walls is a nice touch to her kiting that helps her out a bit, but it's only good on certain maps and like church, but on other maps, lakeside, moonlit, it's not nearly as useful, and it's much harder to kite with her. So she's a C tier survivor. Mind's Eye, I like her. She's not terrible. No survivor in this game is terrible, just because of how the game works. No survivor can be terrible, but in terms of tiers, she is C tier and the second worst survivor in the game right now. The last survivor in C tier is Explorer. Explorer is C tier mainly a lot because of what Mind's Eye suffered from. The coding speed isn't too important right now. So many decoders, it's tough for them to be too viable unless they have something, unless they have a support element with them. If they're just decoding, it's not really too useful to your team. And when you add on to the fact that they can die quickly, you just become a liability. Explorer, however, even though I placed him in C tier, I think he's a bit underrated. Explorer is not bad at all. One, a lot of survivors tend to hide. A lot of survivors tend to hide when they get by a hunter, and it wastes a lot of time. So if you're playing Mind's Eye, if you're playing Mech especially, a lot of times they'll just try to hide. Explorer can hide better than anyone, so he can really waste time for the hunter to find him. So it's actually something really underrated about him, but hiding is not bad anymore. And the fact that he can hide so well, it's pretty useful. On top of that, if he gets the codes that give 50% decoding to a cipher, and he dies quickly, they're still useful. Unlike Mind's Eye, where her decoding buff is useless when she goes on chair. If he goes on chair, the rescuer picks up the code. So if the Merc comes for the rescue, the Merc picks up the code, and he can use it on any cipher for the rest of the game. He can go back to his cipher. Let's say Explorer died quick. Merc cipher is only 50%. Merc can go back to his cipher and finish it instantly. So Explorer is actually useful to your team even if you die quick, as long as you got the code. You add the hiding and the bit of support element, Explorer is not a terrible survivor. The footprint thing is also nice, and not being able to get the hunter not getting a notification when you fast vault is also nice. For mind games, it can buy you some time. So overall, Explorer I do think is underrated. He's not bad at all. He just underperforms a bit, especially for this meta, so that's why he is C tier. Let's get into the next tier, and that is B tier. Okay, the first survivor in B tier, I was deciding whether she would be put in C tier and Explorer would be put in B tier, but I decided to keep Doctor at B tier. Doctor is a support character. Really, the only reason she's in B tier, I'll be honest, is because she hard counters Photographer and Mad Eyes. If she didn't hard counter them, she would be just as useful as a Mind's Eye. But that's only because her healing buff is nice, but it's not something big enough to focus an entire character around. For example, Priestess has a healing buff, and that's really nice, and it really comes in handy. But if that's all she had, then Priestess wouldn't be used. It's the fact she is a great kiter, her super portal, and everything else Priestess has, the decoding, I mean, the healing buff is just a nice touch on top of it. It's not a big enough element to this game to use a whole character just for that. But Doctor has a place on teams when you're facing a photo or a Mad Eye. She hard counters both of them, and you can even see in Koa, Doctor was used a couple of times because they knew it was a photo. So they either used Doctor to steer them away from choosing photo, or when they actually did choose photo, the Doctor completely made his life terrible. So overall, Doctor is around A tier, I'd say, against Photo and Mad Eyes, and she's around C tier against everyone else. So when you put it together, she's a B tier survivor. Next in B tier is Lawyer. Lawyer is no longer the worst survivor in this game. He's not very good also, but he's not the worst, so I think I'll take it. Lawyer is a nice support type of character. The easiest way to sum up Lawyer is he is Mind's Eye, but with better kiting and worse decoding. That's practically what Lawyer is. Mind's Eye, better kiting, worse decoding, and his support element, instead of helping the whole team, it mainly just helps him. That's Lawyer in a nutshell. So you may ask, why is Lawyer B tier then and Mind's Eye C tier? And that's because in this game, kiting is more important than decoding. So it's better for your team to have a person who can kite 50 seconds, probably on average, in Lawyer than someone who can kite 30 seconds on average, like a Mind's Eye. Lawyer is good. The only thing about him is everything he does, good teams can already do. So, like, he can see the hunter, so you can be telling your team where the hunter is, where he's going. Good in VC, you know? But if you already know the spawns, you would already know where the hunter is going. You're already able to rotate without a Lawyer telling you where the hunter is going. So it's just everything he does, a good team can already do for themselves, but he definitely helps at it, and he's not a terrible survivor. As for the no terror shock thing, it's kind of beneficial. It's a nice little touch when he has to make a rescue, or when he's heal stalling at the end of the game for borrowed time. It's a nice touch that he can't get terror shocked. But overall in kiting, it doesn't help too much, because think about it. If you're gonna vault a window and the hunter's there, then what will you do? With another character, you just won't vault the window. You'll take the hit, and after the hit, then you'll vault, take the broken window speed boost, plus, getting hit speed boost. The only difference with Lawyer is, instead of having maybe a second or two of time where you would have to vault, like a second of vaulting, instead he can just take the vault, but it's still the same thing. He still takes the hit, gets hit, runs away. So you're still getting injured regardless, and even the speed boost isn't as big of a difference. So in kiting, the no terror shock thing isn't a big deal at all. Let's get into the next survivor in B tier, and that is Embalmer. Embalmer is B tier because he's niche. Embalmer is not a bad survivor. He can be useful, definitely. He can definitely be useful in certain maps against certain hunters. In big maps, he's especially good. And now, I'd say the best strategy for Embalmer is to put your coffin, in a strong kiting spot. And then you try and kite away from your coffin. But when you die, and the merc saves you with tie turner, or whoever saves you with tie turner, then you can run away from your coffin as far as you can. And after that, you can use your coffin for the second chair, and now the hunter is far away from the coffin. So, and that can win you the game. It's similar to our Priestess super portal. So that's a good strategy for Embalmer, and it works. It's just that If you're on a small map like church, it doesn't matter because the hunter can still catch up to you. If the hunter brought teleport and he just teleports to the cipher by you, you just made yourself die quicker. Or if you're facing a bloody queen, a Wu Chang, maybe even like a clown, those type of hunters, a dream witch leech following you, all of those hunters, you're just making yourself die quicker. So that's really the problem with Embalmer, is all of the counters he has in terms of hunters and also small maps. But he's not a bad survivor, and depending on who you're facing, depending on what map is, he can actually be really good. The next survivor in B tier is Postman. Postman is a support character. Postman is just okay. He decodes fine. His decoding debuff isn't too big of a deal, but his biggest issue is he just can't kite too well. If you're facing a bloody queen, you probably aren't gonna kite long. And that goes for really any hunter. He's just super vulnerable because he doesn't have much kiting tools except for his letters. But the problem with his letters is that it's all random. If his letters weren't random and you could choose anyone you wanted, he would actually be much better, because then you aren't trusting in RNG to whether you'll be able to help your team or not. Also, the fact that it takes time for his letter to go to the survivor hurts his support ability. If he was able to immediately give a buff to a survivor mid kite, and your survivor says they need a movement speed buff or the extra broken windows type of letter buff, and you were able to immediately send it to them, it would be really good, similar to Seer. But the time it takes means that you have to pre-deliver it in hopes that it comes in handy. And sometimes it will, but sometimes it won't. Postman, I think he's underrated a bit because a lot of people think he's not good at all, and I think Postman is a good support character. When I played him, I really enjoyed using him, and if you know the strategies behind him and which letters to use when, and you can get good at that, you're definitely helping your team out. There's no doubt about that. It's just his other flaws really hurt him, and that's what makes him a B tier survivor. Solid survivor, but B tier. Next survivor in B tier is Thief. Thief is a containment survivor. So, Thief is pretty easy to sum up. He's a kiter, and depending on the hunter, he's either a great kiter or he's a mediocre kiter. Certain hunters he can absolutely destroy with his moonwalking, and he can kite for sure 3 ciphers, but then other hunters he won't. Hunters like Bloody Queen and Spider have a built-in ability, even Clown. They all have a built-in ability to moonwalk. So that hurts Thief if that hunter knows to just moonwalk. Hunters like Wu Chang and Feaster, their hitboxes are so long that if you hold attack, you'll hit Thief even when he is moonwalking. And the other hunters he's good against if they don't have an ability to stop moonwalking, or if they don't have a super long hitbox. So it's really, that sums up Thief. Also, if you have teleport trait, you can moonwalk Thief if you're using teleport. So he's in B tier because you can make an argument for him being like an A tier kiter, but then you can make an argument for him being a C tier kiter against other hunters. So when you combine the two, he's just a B tier survivor. All of these tiers change depending on the map, depending on the hunter, but this is the overall tier of these characters. So Thief's overall tier is B tier. Also, I bit my lip the other day and it's difficult to talk. Um, I just thought I'd say that, but yeah, it's difficult. But I'll get through this video. Next survivor in B tier is Wildling. Wildling is a rescuer character. He has the biggest decoding debuff in the game at what I believe is negative 40%. He doesn't have any chair persistence like a lot of rescuers. He's a harasser like Ford, like Cowboy. He's a harassment survivor. Wildling is very niche. This is what all B tier survivors are. They're good, but they're niche, and that's what Wildling is. In certain team comps, like 4 rescuers, or you could go Merc Wildling. Wildling is good because he's a safe rescuer. If someone dies in basement, instead of risking getting stuffed on the save from like a Ford or a Cord, a Wildling can easily make a basement save. So that's just one of the benefits of having a Wildling, is how strong his rescuing is. And then late game, he has potential to stall out because of his pig, but his harassment is overall just okay. It's not as good as Ford, it's not as good as Cowboy, it's just okay harassment. But his rescuing is much better than both of those survivors. I mean, he's a B tier survivor, B plus tier, I'd say. He gets some use. I've seen him get use in tournaments before. He doesn't get too much use in ring, but Wildling takes a lot of skill. If you do not know how to hit the pig on balloons and how to harass properly, then he's a C tier survivor. But if you're teamed up with a great Wildling, you will think he's just as good as Ford, for example. So he's overall a B tier to B plus tier survivor. Lastly, in B tier is a survivor that's fallen from A minus tier. And I hate to say it, I love her, but Dancer is now B tier. Dancer is on a similar boat to Thief. Depending on the map, depending on the hunter, she's either an A tier kiter or she's a C tier kiter. And that's why these type of kiters fall into B tier and they aren't used much, because depending on what the meta is at that time, it may just not be worth it to use her. And for Dancer, she gets hurt by the counters. Bloody Queen counters her. Feaster counters her. Spider soft counters her. Ripper soft counters her. Dream Witchwood Patroller counters her. Wu Chang's Hitbox soft counters her. And I'm sure I'm missing other hunters, but those 5 hunters all counter her to a degree. Also, if Dancer gets found early, it's a GG. If she gets found without being able to be set, like you have your setup music boxes, that's when you can kite a long time. But if you get found without your music boxes set up, like when you're transitioning to a cipher, or you just get teleported on by like a Wu Chang or something, you're going to die extremely quickly. And that's a big liability. You cannot have a kiter character who can die in 20 seconds if she hasn't set up all of her boxes. And this wouldn't be as much of an issue if her boxes weren't one-time use. But if you use all of your boxes to set up to make sure you don't die in 30 seconds, but then the hunter never even went on you, your entire ability was just useless for the rest of the game, you know? Now, if she could pick up her boxes, that way you could easily put the 3 boxes, hunter doesn't chase you, it's fine, pick them up and use them later. But they're just not, you're not able to pick them up, and that hurts Dancer, always has. As for her support element, her red boxes can help for sure. Decode quicker, open and exit gate quicker. They help the team out, but it's not a gigantic buff by any means. So yeah, overall Dancer is a B plus tier survivor. She's the best survivor in B tier, but she has fallen from A tier. let's get into the next tier, A minus tier. The first survivor in A minus tier is Magician. Magician could have fallen to B tier just as easily as Dancer has. Magician is similar to Dancer and Thief as he's a kiter, but it depends on what hunter he's facing to see his effectiveness. But the recent buff to Magician kept him in A minus tier like he has been for since season 1. Now that you're faster after you illusion, that's a nice little addition. But now that he gets rescued and he's invisible for 3 seconds, it gives him a rebound kite potential. And depending on what chair you're at, if you're at an open chair, it doesn't matter much because you can't get anywhere. But there's many chairs. Think about like the chair in the middle of Arms Factory with 3 pallets. If you get chaired there, you could go to any 3 of those pallets and the hunter can't tell, and that can buy you a lot of time on the kite. And there's many chairs like that in this game. So if he's on that type of chair, it really gives him rebound kite potential. His 2 illusions are useful. You just have to be really skilled to use Magician. Make sure you don't get illusion shocked. Probably the biggest issue with Magician is that he only has 2 illusions, so it can run out pretty quickly in your kite. If you have to use those 2 illusions in the first 30 seconds, now you're kiting with no buff, for the rest of the game. So that's really the issue with Magicians. He only has 2 illusions. If he had more illusions, or I think probably like 3 illusions would be good, but if he just had another illusion, he'd be an even better survivor. But he's definitely an underrated survivor. He's a good one right now. His buff kept him at A minus tier, and hopefully that's where he's able to stay at A minus tier. The next survivor in A minus tier is one that's taken a jump in my tier list and is at the highest he's ever been in my tier list, and that is Cowboy. Cowboy is an A minus tier survivor because of his kiting. Cowboy has always been the best harasser because of how long his lasso lasts. He can hit so many lassos, he can hit more lassos than on balloons than Forward can hit stuns on balloons for the most part. On top of that, there is no counterplay in this game to Cowboy. Forward has counterplay, Excitement being the most obvious, but just certain hunters like Anne or, Dream Witch, those type of hunters, they have counterplay. There's no counterplay to Cowboy's instant lasso. There's nothing a hunter can do. You cannot physically drop a survivor quick enough if a Cowboy one-tap lassos. If he one-taps lassos, it doesn't matter how much you spam the button, the game doesn't let you drop the survivor. So because of no counterplay, makes his harassment makes him the best harasser in this game. And now that he's actually a good kiter because he can lasso pallets, lasso ciphers, it makes him a good transitional kiter, and that's what this game's all about, is transitional kiting. It helps him semi-counter Bloody Queen, semi-counter Spider. It makes him a survivor that can reasonably kite 3 ciphers most of the time. So that's why Cowboy is a really good survivor right now, and he is A minus tier. The next survivor in A minus tier is Enchantress. Depending on who you talk to, Enchantress is either, S tier and broken, or she's B tier. Overall, though, Enchantress is an A minus tier survivor. Enchantress struggles because she has nothing to kite with early game. When the hunter first chases you, you have no kiting tools, and that's why she's not an amazing broken type of kiter. However, the longer you kite, that's when she starts becoming really good, and she becomes a great rebound kiter after first chair, especially if you have that triple stun. It's almost like a flare gun, and then if the Merc saves you, it's like you had a flare gun with it. So that makes her a really good rebound kiter. her harassment in game helps a lot. If you need to buy, 20, 30 seconds to finish that cipher and pop borrow time, Enchantress, you know, can buy that time for you, so that makes her really good. And the more you kite, the better you kite, the better she gets. Enchantress takes a lot of skill to play with. In top tiers, she takes skill to play with. Because I know a lot of people may get offended by that comment, but yeah, it's the truth. When you're facing hunters that hard counter you, Dream Witch, Bloody Queen, both hard counter Enchantress. Spider soft counters her. Feaster does a really good job against her. Wu Chang does a good job against her. When you're facing those top tier hunters, yes, it takes a lot of skill to kite with Enchantress, and she's very hard to play with. But overall, she's an A- tier survivor. If she had kiting tools from the start, she would be a lot better. Next in A- tier is Prospector. Prospector is very similar to everything I said about Enchantress. In-game harassment's really good to buy the 20 to 30 seconds. He's a great rebound kiter because you can have, 3 magnets on the save and you can use all of those magnets. Basically everything I said about Enchantress goes for Prospector. The difference is Prospector has 1 magnet from the start, while Enchantress has no stuns from the start. Prospector's 1 magnet helps, but it's not enough against most hunters. If they ever give him his buff of 2 magnets, Prospector would for sure be A+ tier. A very, very good survivor if he had 2 magnets from the start. Because the 2 magnets snowball into 3 magnets is what you have to realize. When you have 1 magnet and it takes, like 60 seconds to get the next one? 1 magnet is not enough to usually buy you the 60 seconds for your second one. But when you have 2 magnets, let's just do some math here. Let's say 1 magnet adds 30 seconds to your kite. Just hypothetically. 1 magnet adds 30 seconds to your kite. And it takes, let's say, 60 seconds to get another one. If you have 1 magnet, it's not giving you your second magnet because you still have to make up for those 30 seconds you're missing. But let's say you have 2 magnets, both buy you 30 seconds on the kite, and it takes 60 seconds to refresh another one. Now, the first magnet's buying you 30 seconds, the second magnet's buying you 30 seconds. That gives you your third magnet, that buys you another 30 seconds. That's now a 90-second kite instead of a 30-second kite. So it is not purely 2 magnets adds double what the first magnet does. It actually adds triple what the first magnet does. That's what happened with Priestess. A good Priestess is always going to have 3 portals on the first kite, because if she uses them wisely, each portal is going to add 30 seconds to her kite, which gives her the third portal. That was a lot for Prospector, but I hope you understand. That's why he's A- tier. He only has 1 magnet from the start, but it's better than Enchantress having no magnets from the start. Let's get into the next A- tier survivor, and that is Gardener. Gardener is A- tier. I know a lot of people are still misinformed about Gardener and think she's bad or she's a troll character. She's not. She's used in tournament a good amount. She is a great counter to Dream Witch and Bloody Queen. The 2 best hunters in the game, she counters. A 50-second shield from the start of the game is good. Just understand that. 50-second shield, a 50-second Seer Owl is good. Okay? That helps you kite 3 ciphers. All you have to do is kite 3 ciphers. If a 3 cipher kite is 70 seconds on average, because ciphers take 80 seconds to pop, but it takes time for the hunter to get to you and for them to chair you. So a 3 cipher kite is 70 seconds, and you already have 50 seconds in the kite because you're Gardner, that means all you have to do is kite 20 seconds without a shield. And that's easy to do when she has the veterans bonus that gives her a longer and faster speed boost when getting hit. And also when she has vaulting speed buffs, all of that makes her into a good 3-cipher kiter. And that's why Gardner is a very good survivor right now. Her new buff helped her. It gives her a support element. It also makes her toolbox not useless. So all of the people who complain Gardner's toolbox is useless, blah blah blah, it's not anymore, because if you break a chair, no, it's not going to be toxic and the hunter can never place anyone on chairs, but it's helping your team because it's giving them 10% chair persistence. And if your team is smart enough to use max snooze, or if they are a character like Mercenary or Coordinator Officer, someone with chair persistence already, it makes them last longer. Gardner herself has 10% chair persistence. Now, if you get placed on a chair she was already on, that's 20%. Then if you have max snooze, you know it's longer. It's starting to get as long as a mercenary chair. So it gives her a nice support element, and Gardner's always has been a very good kiter ever since her buff. The reason Gardner is not higher in this tier list is because her shield is not as good against, more non-meta hunters. Ripper, Spider, Feaster, she's not as good of a kiter. Against Dream and Bloody Queen, she's a very good kiter, but against other hunters, she's just a okay kiter because of the shield. So that's why overall she is an A- tier survivor. The last survivor in A- tier is Barmaid. Barmaid is a support character. Barmaid can also kite. Barmaid gives the support that Doctor does in theory, but doesn't actually in the game. Because healing up, takes time, and it takes time from decoding ciphers. Barmaid simply gives a free heal. She gives a wine to the survivor, and then they can both go decode and do something while the healing is taking into effect. Because of that, it makes her support very good. It helps a lot with the mercenary because he has a long healing time. So instead of wasting all that time healing, you just give him the wine, and then both of you go decode, and then he gets healed up. She's a very good support character and keeps everyone at full health. Her kiting is pretty okay. It's just okay. Depending on the hunter, depends whether it's great or it's not. If it's a clown or really any hunter that uses blink as their trait, her kiting's not, that good at all because blink counters it. Because you can just get your second hit from blink before she heals up. If she has a Seer on her team, Barmaid is probably S tier survivor because it guarantees another heal up. So her and Seer is a great combination together. But usually Seer is banned or you don't have a Seer on your team. So herself as a character alone is A- tier because her kiting against a lot of hunters just isn't too good. Her support is amazing. And against Dream Witch, she is S tier. She's a hard counter to Dream Witch, and that really gives her a place in many tournament comps because you're going to be facing Dream Witch. So if you use a Barmaid, you're using a hard counter to Dream Witch. So that's why Barmaid, even though she's A- tier, she can get used more than some A+ tier survivors in tournament because of the hunters they're facing. Let's get into the final tier. Oh, not the final tier, the second to final tier, and that is A+ tier. The first survivor in A+ tier is First Officer. First Officer is a great rescuer, and that's about it. First Officer is amazing at what he does. He rescues. He's not going to get stuffed on the save. He's not going to get double hit on the save. Plus, he buys a little bit more time for the person he rescued because they get disguised as him. And also, you cannot kill him early game because his watches are a free for 40-second kite, and then you can kite the rest of the time yourself. So he's a 3 cipher kite if you chase him. He's a great rescuer, and he has chair persistence. He's A+ tier. The reason why he's not better is because he's not a game-changing survivor. If your team wasn't kiting well, someone died quickly, and he's not going to change the flow of the game. So if your team died quickly and it's looking to be about a loss or it's looking to be about a tie, that's what it's going to be, because Officer cannot do anything to help his team change that. So if it's going to be a tie because they died quickly, but tie turner, gives the team time to decode, it's just going to be a tie, and there's nothing you can do as an officer to change that. This matters a lot because when you have, a rescuer like Forward, he's used so much because he does change that. If someone's about to die in 30 seconds, he can extend that kite to 80 seconds. So what was about to be a loss or a tie is now a win. If Forward, I'm not going to get too much into Forward right now because I'm going to talk about him when I get to him, but that's just the difference between rescuers, and that's why First Officer is a very solid character, an A+ tier character, but that's why he's not higher up in this tier list. The next survivor in A+ tier is a newer one, and that is Gravekeeper. Gravekeeper is a rescuer survivor, and he draws many comparisons to Officer. However, they are a lot different. Gravekeeper is a slightly faster decoder, but he has no chair persistence like Officer. When you're just looking at the stats, you'd actually think that First Officer is a lot better than Gravekeeper because Gravekeeper's shovels are not nearly as an effective kiting tool as First Officer's watches. The reason why Gravekeeper is so good and why he's getting a lot of use in Koa right now is because he counters Dreamwitch. He's a hard counter to Dreamwitch. If you hit him underground with his leech, the leech goes away, and he hard counters Patroller. If he gets a Patroller on him, so first, if he's underground, you cannot Patroller him. But even more, if you Patroller him when he's above ground, and then he goes underground, the Patroller stops working. He's such a hard counter to Patroller, and that really hurts Dreamwitch. He's a hard counter to Dreamwitch. That makes him a very good survivor because of that. He also counters Wu Chang because you cannot soul siphon a Gravekeeper. Wu Chang is very popular right now and a very good hunter, so that makes Gravekeeper good. And all of those things, First Officer doesn't do. You can Patroller a First Officer. You can soul siphon a First Officer. And that's why Gravekeeper has the edge over Officer, even if on paper stats don't look like he should. The biggest issue with Gravekeeper is that he's not a stellar kiter. He's just not. His shovels probably on average will usually last you maybe 10 to 15 seconds if you're lucky, or you may just have to use the shovel as, like a Seer owl. It's just to block a hit. So that's why Gravekeeper isn't better, because for, a Bloody Queen or really any chase type of hunter, he's probably going to be pretty easy to down in within 60 seconds, while an Officer is not. And that's a waste of your time to chase an Officer, because Officer is going to kite you 3 ciphers, and then he's going to have 20% chair persistence. A Gravekeeper is going to kite you not 3 ciphers, I mean like barely 3 ciphers if that, and then he doesn't have any chair persistence. The faster decoding is a nice touch, however, for Gravekeeper. The next survivor in A+ tier is another rescuer, and that is Coordinator. Coordinator is A+ tier. She's gone through being, S tier at the start to like falling to A minus tier to her then getting buffed back to A plus tier. And I think she's in a really good spot right now. She's a solid survivor. She's not a main rescuer. She can't be the only rescuer on your team because she can get stuffed on the save. However, Cord is a great support rescuer. She really is. The flare gun helps a lot, and getting hit by the gun, I mean, it can change the game for sure. That can buy the survivor up to, 60 seconds on a kite, or, if it's a Wu Chang Bloody Queen, it doesn't do much, and they still die before tie turn is over. But overall, the flare gun is never a bad thing to have. It's good. If it's in game, she can use it to harass and so that to stall out the time for borrowed time. Coordinator is a good kiter because of the flare gun. Because if you shoot the flare gun early game, it basically functions as a gardener's shield, buying you 50 seconds of a kite just because of the flare gun. So that makes Coordinator really good in this meta. The fact that she will not die in under 50 seconds, and then she gives rescue potential on top of that. Coordinator can either be used as a secondary rescuer using tie turner, or you can use her as a kiter because she doesn't have a decoding debuff when someone's not on chair. So she can just be used as a regular kiter. You can go broken windows with her, and you have, let's say, a merc and a forward, and you can just go broken windows cord as a kiter, similar to what Perfumer would be, or gardener, or magician, etc. So Coordinator is a really solid survivor. She's great for tournament comps, great in tournament, and she is A plus tier. The next survivor in A plus tier is Acrobat. Acrobat is one of the best kiters in this entire game. I'd probably say he's the second best kiter in the game to Perfumer, because his kiting, he's a great opening kiter. He has 3 balls to start. You'll usually get another one if you kite 60 seconds, so he really has 4 balls first kite. That gives you a lot of kiting potential on first one, and it also probably gives you balls in case you die. You'll still probably have 1 or 2 left, so it gives him great rebound kite potential as well. He's a good rescuer, so he is able to carry tie turner if you need so. His 2 slow balls work as a flare gun when he rescues a survivor, which is a really nice touch. And Acrobat is never in fear of getting terror shocked because he can just ball instead of taking that vault, not get hit at all. Unlike Lawyer, who still takes the hit, Acrobat just doesn't get hit at all, which is much better. Acrobat only struggles. Only reason Acrobat isn't S tier is because of 2 reasons. One, Bloody Queen. Bloody Queen counters Acrobat and she's meta. Dream Witch also does a good job against Acrobat. But the second reason is because this game favors support. This game favors not just being able to do one thing. You have to be able, if you're a kiter, you have to be a great support as well. If you're a rescuer, you have to do some game-changing type support as well. Acrobat really isn't a support, he's just a pure kiter. So the most a pure kiter will really be in this meta is A plus tier. The next survivor in A plus tier is the newest survivor in the game, Prisoner. Prisoner is a decoder / support character. A lot of people may think he's S tier or the replacement to Mech, but he's neither. He's just a great addition to this game in terms of survivors, because when you're choosing your team count, usually you want to go, double rescuer, merc forward, and then you want to go, let's just say for example, a Perfumer. But then you have 1 spot left. So you can go a Priestess, who gives you support. Her support is different though. Her support is in kiting support in her super portal. Or you could go a Prisoner, instead of like kiting support, you're getting decoding support. Or you could go a Barmaid that gives you healing support. So Prisoner really fits into like all of these different options you have, and he's a nice decoding support character. He can finish the Rescuer Cipher. He helps his team out a lot. He's not some super fast decoder, but the fact that the whole team can benefit off of his ability really gives him a nice place on any team comp because of his support. The last survivor in A+ tier is one that's always been S tier, but recently she received a pretty sizable nerf, and that has taken her down a tier, but still is the top of A+ tier, and that is Mechanic. Mechanic still does what she did before, which is Cypher Rush. She Cypher Rushes better than any other survivor in the game, and she can decode a Cypher on chair. Both of those things guarantees a tie when you have Mechanic. She also carries Tie Turner, which is a big help to have a secondary rescuer who's still decoding while rescuing. Because of those things, Mechanic will always be meta, and she will always be very good unless that gets taken away. The difference is Mechanic used to make this game into a 5v1. Now the game is a 4v1, but she just decodes faster. Or she just decodes while rescuing or while being chaired. But it's not a 5v1 because her bot doesn't last the entire game like it used to. You can't use her bot to open the exit gate super fast, to rescue someone in game, to hide it so then the hunter gets tinnitus in game and he can't even leave the chair. So he just has to take the loss or take the tie. All of those things you used to do, which made Mechanic broken and which made her the most broken survivor in the game, she can no longer do, which is why she's not S tier anymore, but everything she's supposed to do, she still excels at, which is Cypher Rushing. And she's still the best Cypher Rusher in the game, so for that reason, she is A+ tier. Now let's get into the best survivors in this game, the final tier, S tier. The first survivor in S tier is Priestess. Priestess is a support character who's a kiting support. Priestess is S tier because her support is very good. Her portals can help anyone kite. Anyone. If you go in the portal mid-kite, it can buy you 30-40 seconds on the kite. So that just helps if you have a good Priestess setting up portals for your team. Her super portal can change the game. Her super portal can turn a loss into a win easily. Because it makes the survivor that's about to die, it makes the hunter lose them. Depending on the hunter and their trait, it can completely turn around the game. Hunters have to adapt their playstyle because there's a Priestess on the team. Maps like Hospital, Moonlit, Leo's, she's just completely broken. On those maps, she's probably S+ tier. She's just completely broken there. And on every other map like Arms and Church, she's around S tier. Overall, Priestess is, you can see her used more than Perfumer. Depending on the team, a lot of teams prefer Priestess over Perfumer because even though she decodes slower, she can be a better kiter depending on the hunter, and she gives a lot more support than Perfumer does. Speaking of Perfumer, that is the next survivor in S tier. Perfumer has been S tier ever since she came out at the end of Season 1. I think that's the longest, except for maybe Forward, but I think now, because Mech is A+ tier, Perfumer is the longest running S tier survivor, basically. And she's received no nerfs. Every other S tier survivor, keep this in mind, every other S tier survivor, I won't name them, but they have all received nerfs. And Mechanic has received nerfs, along with A tier survivors receiving nerfs, like Enchantress. Perfumer has been S tier ever since release, and she has never gotten a nerf. Everyone that says Perfumer is balanced, no, Perfumer is not balanced. She is the best kiter in this game, period. Perfumer is a broken kiter. She can destroy Bloody Queens. She can destroy Dream Witch and any other hunter. She counters every single hunter. She can kite any hunter 3 ciphers if you're good with her. She's a good rescuer as well. And there's a lot of benefit in having a survivor where no matter what the hunter is, they're going to kite 3 ciphers. That is just such a powerful tool for any team comp. That's why she's so popular, and that's why she is S tier. Because she is the ultimate kiter, and then you can add on, rescue potential and no decoding debuff, and she is still S tier. But if she probably deserves a nerf. And if I were to nerf her, just to say, I would make her cooldown longer, because even if you bait the perfume, she can still waste 10 seconds of time to get her next perfume. So I'd probably make the cooldown into 15 seconds to punish her if she makes a mistake. The next survivor in S tier is Forward. Forward is amazing. I think Forward is probably the single most game-changing survivor right now. He can make any game, any loss into a win, any tie into a win. He's a rescuer character, and the only reason he's not the best rescuer is because he's not the best at rescuing, but he provides a lot more because of his harassment. So many games, if it's a tie and then Forward comes and stalls 20 to 30 seconds, that tie turns into a win. If it's a loss and Forward stalls 20 to 30 seconds, that loss is a tie. If it's a loss and Forward really destroys the hunter and stalls, like 50 seconds, it's a win. And it's not hard to do. It's not hard to stall 20 to 30 seconds as Forward. If you have a good Forward on your team, it's really difficult for the hunter. It's super difficult. He gets used in Koa. Every single Chinese team uses a Forward on their team. He's banned a lot because he's super game changing. And there's just so many examples. You can watch so many Koa matches where a Forward saved the game. One of the most notable ones is MRC versus 5HS. It was 5HS Yang as Dream Witch, first round. He was about to kill the mechanic with Patroller in 30 seconds. The Forward stunned him twice during that chase, and that helped mechanic kite 3 ciphers instead of dying in 30 seconds. And then the ciphers weren't ready in-game for borrowed time, so it was still going to be a tie, but Forward got another stun, which bought mechanic 20 more seconds on her kite, and then the 2 ciphers were ready to pop. Borrowed time popped, and the survivors won the game simply because they had a Forward on their team. That's how powerful Forward is in this meta. He is for sure S tier. The next survivor in S tier is Mercenary. Mercenary is the ultimate rescuer. Just like how I call Perfumer the ultimate kiter, Mercenary is the ultimate rescuer. He's not going to get stuffed on save. He can easily avoid double hit. You cannot chase a Mercenary. He has long chair persistence. There's no reason to not have a Mercenary on your team. He doesn't decode super slow. There's no reason to not have a Mercenary on your team. And that's what S tier survivors are really about. What they do, they excel at better than any other survivor in the game. So in terms of kiting, you have other good kiters, but Perfumer excels at it better. Support, you have other good supports as I've named, but Priestess does it better. And that's what Mercenary is. First Officer is another great rescuer. But everything Officer does, Mercenary does better and more. So that's why Mercenary is S tier. His nerf really didn't do anything. One less elbow pad is not a big deal at all. And he is S tier. Probably like S plus tier to be honest. But Mercenary is a great survivor. You'll see him on every single team comp unless he's banned. The last survivor in S tier, no longer having to share the best survivor name with mechanic, and you can fully say he is the best survivor in the game, and that is Seer. Seer is the best survivor in Identity 5. and it's not because of himself. Seer is a support character, meaning Seer is the best character in the game because his support. When you stack a Seer with a Perfumer can take 7 hits before dying. Stack a Seer with a Barmaid can take 5 hits before dying. So a Seer, when you stack, and then any other survivor in the game, they go from 2 hits before dying to 3 hits before dying. And he can make anyone a rescuer. You can, anyone that doesn't have, rescue ability, you give them an owl. Now they're basically a mercenary and they can rescue. That's why Seer is so good. If he is not chased first, his support is too good, and that's why he's the most banned survivor in the game, in tournament and in rank. And even if you do find the Seer early, he can take at least 3 hits, if not stacking more owls to take more hits. So Seer is a good kiter while being an amazing support. And for that reason, Seer is now the best survivor in the game, and it's all because of his support. That is it for the tier list. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave it a like. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, please subscribe to the channel. As I said, I'm really pushing for 20,000 subscribers for the summertime. So please subscribe if you haven't already. And that'll be it for the video. Bye.